You're listening to Advancing Our Church. Welcome to Advancing Our Church, a Changing Our World podcast about Catholic stewardship, leadership, and advancement. And I'm your host, Jim Friend. Well, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. And welcome to the season of Lent. I want to wish you all the very best on your Lenten journey. As you may have noticed by the length of this episode, we have a packed show for you today on the topic of faith and fundraising in 2021. But first, we're going to start with a special message from Catholic Purchasing Services and a brief conversation with my friend Kevin Campagna, who is the Director of Sales and Service. Well, Kevin, welcome to the podcast. We're glad to have you here today. And, I was excited when you reached out and when we made the connection. Catholic Purchasing Services, I've been familiar with you for many, many years. I remember shopping out of the catalog when I worked at my parish 20 some years ago. And I'm sure you've evolved quite a bit from them. But for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with Catholic Purchasing Services, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization.
Sure. Well, thank you, Jim, for having me and giving us a little bit of time. And Catholic Purchasing, is an organization. To your earlier point, we've been around for over 35 years. We are a company within the Catholic Church, so we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization. Our mission allows us to work exclusively with religious nonprofit organizations. So that would be Catholic schools, Catholic churches, Archdiocese offices, elder care, or any hospitals that are affiliated with nonprofit on the religious side of things, faith-based, right? So I've been with the organization for a little under a year now, working as the sales and service director. And, within my time here, we've started to evolve a little bit. Traditionally, we were a catalog company, again, to your earlier point, where we would publish catalogs on a 2 or 3 time basis annually. But now we've tried to focus a little bit more as our society shops more on the web and everything becomes a little bit more web focused. We're seeing more of our customers adapt. So we're revamping our website and doing a lot more on the email marketing side to try to get the word out. And thanks to, again, you for having us. One of the biggest hurdles that we find is we talk to customers and we talk about our pricing is, best in the industry. I mean, so if you look at, where we offer our products, whether they be candles or host or vestments or apparel, we have a very broad product line. We have national agreements with Staples and with Cintas and with Xerox, so big multinational companies. Our pricing is first in class in the industry. And then we also offer convenience. So a customer, instead of having to go to Staples to buy some of their supplies there, and then they would have to go to Cintas, or they would have to go to Amazon, or they would want to go, they can kind of work through the products that we have, whether it be, again, Jan Sand, office supplies, break room supplies, paper, etc. So we're now reaching out and doing a little bit more on the social media side, as well as email marketing to kind of get the word out. But one of the biggest things, as I was saying, people we speak to say, well, we didn't even know you existed. Thank you so much. Your pricing is great. Your service is impeccable, but we just got to get the word out.
Absolutely. And you guys serve coast to coast, right? The entire United States. Wonderful.
Our charter allows us to work with organizations throughout the continental U.S., or I should say throughout the U.S. and its properties. So we have some business in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, et cetera. Not a ton of business there, with freight being what it is to get it over there.
Sure.
But yeah, our charter allows us to work with those organizations.
Well, that's wonderful. And what's your website? How can people find you?
Our website is www.catholicpurchasing.org.
Okay. Super. And you had mentioned you're running a special contest for Catholic schools. Tell us a little bit about that.
We kind of were talking amongst ourselves in the fall and identified Catholic Schools Week as a very, certainly a very worthwhile effort and a worthwhile event, and working through some of our contacts at NCEA. We know it's a big priority for them. So we were thinking amongst ourselves, what could we do? So we established our CPS, which is our Catholic Purchasing Services acronym, our leadership awards. And we gave out $500 awards to 4 different schools across the U.S. And those checks were mailed, a week ago or so they should have those in hand. We identified schools that had really done a nice job persevering through, we have to all admit, some of the most challenging times any of us have ever seen. So we felt it was a worthwhile effort to try to give back, and we selected some schools that have done some great things.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds exciting. And if anyone was looking for information about that, they can find that on your website.
Yeah, for sure. We have all the information on our website, certainly about the leadership awards. What we've also done too is, to try to introduce any customers that aren't familiar with Catholic purchasing. We've chosen probably 8 or 9 different suppliers, and we've chosen maybe 4 or 5 products from those suppliers and put some really hot featured pricing on our site for them. So anything from PPE to tech equipment to furniture, so anything that they might need, coming into, and we're starting to see schools prepare to reopen. And then we know that there was some CARES Act money that's been activated recently. So if there's a way for us to help any of these organizations, please visit our website. We have our customer service people who are here to help. We can quote on projects large or small, but we've got a very diverse portfolio.
Oh, fantastic, Kevin. Well, we'll leave a link to Catholic Purchasing on the show notes of our episode, and to you and to everybody at Catholic Purchasing. Thanks for all you do to support the mission of the church. It's so important. Many of our schools, our missions, our parishes are on shoestring budgets, especially these days. Well, we're weathering this pandemic, and so thanks for all you do to help make things a little more affordable.
We know every dollar has to go that much further in these challenging times. So anything we can do to help.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for being on the show. We'll have you back
Jim,
again.
thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
I want to thank Kevin for stopping by our show this week. I'll be certain to leave a link to Kevin and Catholic Purchasing Services in our show notes. Now, let's get to work. On the show today, I host a panel with 4 top-notch fundraisers on the topic of faith and fundraising in 2021. This presentation was held in partnership with the Nonprofit Alliance, and you'll learn more about the work of the Nonprofit Alliance by visiting their website at tnpa.org. And so, without further ado, here is Faith and Fundraising in 2021.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be around the country watching this webinar or listening to this podcast. Welcome. My name is Jim Friend. I'm a managing director for Changing Our World and the host of the Advancing Our Church podcast. I just want to welcome all of you who have joined us today. We have a terrific turnout. We're so grateful for all of your interest in today's topic, fundraising and philanthropy in 2021. And we have a wonderful group of panelists who are going to share their wisdom and their experiences. And all of you also will have the opportunity to offer your feedback and ask questions during this podcast. And so just to start, I'd like to say thank you to our partner, the Nonprofit Alliance. A big thank you to Shannon McCracken and her team for all the support in setting this webinar up, and certainly the committee. It's been a great experience, and we're so grateful for your partnership on behalf of Changing Our World. Our Advancing Our Church podcast is a Catholic stewardship, leadership, and advancement podcast. And for more information about that, you can visit us at advancingourchurch.com. And Advancing Our Church is a production of Changing Our World, and we are a fundraising and social impact consulting firm, and we've been advising nonprofits and corporations for over 21 years For more information about our firm, please visit us at changingourworld.com. And as I said before, you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions. You can type them into the comments section, and they will be sent to me throughout the next hour. We're going to go ahead, before I introduce our wonderful panel, we're going to go ahead and start with a prayer, as we should start all things. And this is a little stewardship prayer that I've used for many years. And so let us bow our heads and put ourselves in the presence of the Lord for a moment, and start this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Loving God, we come to you in thanksgiving, knowing that all we have and all that we are is a gift from you. In faith and love, help us to do your will. We are listening, Lord God. Speak your words into the depths of our souls that we may hear you clearly. We offer to you this day all the facets of our lives, whether it be at home, at work, or at school. To be patient, to be merciful, to be generous, to be holy. Give us the wisdom and insight to understand your will for us, and the fervor to carry out our good intentions. We offer our gifts of time, talent, and possessions to you as a true act of faith, to reflect our love for you and our neighbor. Help us to reach out to others as you, my God, have reached out to me. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Okay, well, let's begin by just introducing our wonderful panelists. I'm sure that I know many of you are very familiar with all of them, and so we're just going to go around the horn here real quick. We'll start with Joe Gillmer. Joe, welcome to the show. Joe's passion for philanthropy has translated into more than $865 million in support for a variety of philanthropic initiatives since 2001. He's the Executive Director of Development for the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Washington. He's had a heavy focus on faith-based and Catholic initiatives throughout his career. He's worked closely with hundreds of parishes across the United States. He has directed major annual appeals, multiple year capital campaigns, assessments, studies, and provided planned giving counsel for many dioceses, including my home diocese of Allentown, Baltimore, Chicago, Fresno, Los Angeles, Raleigh, Richmond, and Washington, D.C. Joe regularly presents on a range of philanthropy topics for the religious sector. He serves on the board of directors for the nonprofit Alliance Foundation and the advisory board for the Nonprofit Alliance's Catholic Development Council. And Joe also serves as an advisor for I Give Catholic, an annual crowdfunding event that inspires faithful stewards to give Catholic on Giving Tuesday. Joe, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Jim.
And Lisa Quist. Lisa serves the Edmundite missions as the Chief Development Officer, leading all philanthropic strategies that support the transformative programs of the missions. Her vocational goals are accomplished by inspiring current and prospective partners to support the vital ministries of the missions that provide both services and solutions. Previously, as the leader of the gift planning division of the mission advancement team at Maryknoll Fathers and Brothers, Lisa successfully led the major gift and planned giving program. Throughout her nearly 12 years of leadership at Maryknoll, Lisa demonstrated her proven success in the areas of team development, project management, strategic planning, and integrated donor relationship management. Lisa holds a master's degree in organizational leadership and has earned professional certificates in fundraising from Boston University and strategic human resource planning from the University of Michigan. She serves as the vice chair of the National Catholic Development Conference and is now, she had served, I should say, NCDC, and is now an advisory board member of the Nonprofit Alliance's Catholic Development Council. She is committed and dedicated to sharing her love of the mission with others and to helping those most in need. Lisa is also the religious education program coordinator of her local parish, comprised of nearly 200 students, where she also serves on the parish council. Lisa, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jim. It's my pleasure to be here.
Lisa, you're a busy person. I was wondering, what do you do between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m.? You might have a hole there you could fill in your calendar there.
Plan the next day.
Plan the next day, right. Kevin Callahan is the Director of Events and Community Relations with SOAR, which stands for Support Our Aging Religious, located in Washington, D.C. Over the past 2 decades, Kevin Callahan has served in senior development and advancement roles at the National Catholic Education Association in Arlington, Theological College, the National Seminary of the Catholic University of America, Notre Dame High School in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, the Covenant House in Times Square, and Fort Lauderdale, Florida. In his events role at SOAR, Kevin strategizes with the president and CEO, senior staff, board of directors, regional event committees, honorees, sponsors, vendors, and volunteers in successfully planning and executing SOAR special events, including annual galas in New York City and Washington, D.C. In his community relations work, he seeks to build cooperation and support in advancing the mission of SOAR. He's a proud product of 18 years of Catholic education in the Archdiocese of New York. Kevin is a graduate of Iona College and has served on the Iona College Alumni Association Board of Directors for 16 years. Kevin and his wife Ann have 2 children and reside in Alexandria, Virginia. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Jim.
Great to have you here.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Sarah Hanley. Sarah is the President and Chief Executive Officer for the Catholic Foundation of Greater Philadelphia. With more than 25 years of business development and leadership experience, Sarah is responsible for the growth and strategic oversight of the foundation and leading a team of dedicated staff who support the foundation's mission. Sarah has been with the foundation since its founding in 2013. In her previous roles with the foundation, Sarah was responsible for the annual Catholic Charities Appeal and the St. Charles Borromeo Seminary Appeal that collectively raised nearly $20 million annually. Is that all, Sarah? $20 million annually. It's a lot of money. She also led the foundation's Mission Advancement Services team, which continues to help grow the fundraising and development efforts of many Catholic institutions across southeastern Pennsylvania. Sarah's commitment to the mission of the foundation stems from her lifelong dedication to her faith and her hometown. As a native Philadelphian, Sarah now gives back to her community and her faith in ways she could have only hoped for. Today, Sarah and her husband Jim live in suburban Philadelphia and have 2 sons. She's an active member of St. Kevin Parish in Springfield, where she's the president of their Women's Club Board of Directors. She's a member of the Executive Board of Elementary Education for the Archdiocese and an advisory board member for Villa Maria Academy Lower School. She's also a former board member of the National Catholic Development Conference. Prior to her time with the foundation, Sarah worked in the Office of Stewardship and Development in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia as the Director of Appeals before transitioning into the nonprofit sector. She had a highly successful career in business development and sales leadership, working for AmeriGas Propane and National Car Rental. Sarah is a proud graduate of Drexel University, holding a BS in Marketing and Management. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Jim. It's great
Sarah
to be
and I have known each other. Sarah and I have known each other a long time, so I had to give her a little bit of ribbing. Absolutely. Yeah. We were 12 when we started. So anyway, here we go. Let's get started on these questions. We're going to start. We have some key areas today that we're going to talk about with our panel. And we're going to talk about technology. We're going to talk about working with religious and clergy. We're going to talk about a variety of ways in which philanthropy has changed in the last year, and really also how do we foresee it in the coming year of 2021. You know, certainly there are certain ways in which we have adapted that we don't necessarily want to go back on, and we'll talk about those too. And then there are ways in which we're making the best of a challenging situation, and yet there have been some great success stories. And I know that you all have wonderful success stories to share and some great wisdom to share with us as well. So let's start on the topic of technology and special events first. And as I said, technology doesn't necessarily roll backwards. We know that there are lessons that we've all learned during the pandemic that will certainly influence our development operation and plans moving forward. And also, you know, when you think about how technology has changed, how have you seen that engagement has increased through the use of technology? And then can you provide some examples? And I think everyone on our panel here probably has something to share on technology and how that's impacted your operation. So I'm going to start with Lisa. Lisa, why don't you start with us?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. So, of course, we've all had to embrace technology, and Zoom calls has really been probably at the top. So whereas before we were so used to out there visiting with donors, now we're faced to find other ways to do that. So, having some successful Zoom calls has been, of course, I think, probably on everyone's, plate. Also, we've incorporated text to give that's been something that we've been able to incorporate into our program, actually even into our appeals, having the option to text to give, using the resources to develop obvious webinars. So we had a virtual plan giving webinar, which was also successful in terms of having those resources available to utilize them during the webinar, but then to send it out to the donors using email and Facebook and other digital platforms to support that work and to encourage those to consider plan gifts with the missions. Of course, email, utilizing email to its fullest advantage. I mean, I really think that we had a Season of Giving campaign that we actually kicked off on Giving Tuesday and ran every Tuesday up until Christmas. And it really was a great success. It was through email and through Facebook. And then we had a virtual event planned for 2020, but unfortunately it did have to get canceled, but we're excited because we are looking to hold a similar event that we had planned for the summer of 2021. So we've had some great success in all of these areas, and we'll just continue to embrace all of them in 2021.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lisa. How about you, Kevin?
Well, in a similar way, as Lisa shared, I think we were, like many other nonprofit organizations, forced to, just about a year ago, to pivot from two long-standing, like 34-year annual dinner galas, one in New York and one in Washington, here in Washington, D.C. And we had to pivot to the world of virtual galas. What did we all know about virtual galas before 12 months ago? We knew kind of the video production side of it because we'd had organizational videos. But how do we translate that to those who would be attending these galas virtually? So the first step was to basically vet 12 to 15 partners who we thought might be able to help us accomplish that. We whittled that down to 2 or 3, and we ended up actually with 2 partners, one virtual partner who helped us with the video content and the editing and those types of activities. And then we also secured a vendor who helped us with the actual platform, as well as the merchant services side in accepting donations. Similar to what Lisa mentioned, it kind of opened us to the world of text to donate, otherwise known as text to give. So that was something that was new to us as well. So what were the pros of that situation? Making lemonade out of lemons. The pros were that we could reach out to a larger audience. We could provide the gala environment virtually to attendees who never in a million years would come to New York or Washington for our galas. What were the cons? 34 years of traditional in-person galas and not having that opportunity and not being able to see our donors face to face. But technologically, it went very well for us, and so well, and it looks as though 2021 is going to be a virtual world for us again.
Sure, makes sense. Thanks, Kevin. How about you, Sarah?
Thanks, Jim. A lot of the same things that Kevin and Lisa have said apply to us, but I think one addition I can make is that we found attendance to events and attendance for meetings has increased exponentially. People whose schedules normally wouldn't have permitted them to be able to attend board and committee meetings, fortunately or unfortunately can't travel, so they can participate. The same thing with scheduling donor meetings and prospective donor meetings, and really sitting down with our fund holders. All of those things became a little bit easier due to the accessibility of technology. So I think it's taught us that someday when life returns to whatever normal will be, we can't forget what we've learned and our abilities to embrace what we have to be able to get people together. Mm-hmm. We also launched a speaker series this past year, and because of the virtual environment, we were able to have speakers participate who don't live near us, and normally there would have been travel time and expense and everything like that. So that's been a plus. And then we've been able to help some of our clients with fundraising events that could be almost exclusively social media based, with a link to give electronically, and have a broad audience to promote those events to.
I'm excited to see the reports on 2020's electronic giving, especially where around parishes. I know Blackbaud typically publishes a report because it's going to skyrocket in 2020 compared to what it was. And without that support, many of our parishes would have had to shut their doors, and many of our schools too. So that's tremendous. Joe, tell us what's going on in Washington around technology.
Sure. I was thinking of a couple examples on both a parish level, what we're seeing, as well as, of course, an archdiocesan level. On a parish level, one of the first things that really flourished quite quickly was the idea of the live stream masses. So, if you were in a diocese where masses were shut down, either a diocesan decision to do so or a county decision that was shutting down effectively anything in terms of groups, you had to innovate, or you were not going to have engagement within your community. And what we found is we saw a couple dozen parishes that had live stream masses prior to the pandemic, but by May, that number had climbed into nearly 100 of the 140 parishes of the Archdiocese. And what was neat about that was, once they got comfortable with doing live stream masses, and sometimes it was as simple as somebody's iPhone that was on a tripod to a little more sophisticated breakout, suddenly other things started to dawn on many of the parishes, and that was engagement with parishioners on programs that were also virtual. So we saw the comfort with Zoom or GoToMeetings or anything that's similar of a virtual meeting environment go from folks that would go like, I haven't done that before, to becoming adept to it by the summertime. And now, all of us feel like we do nothing but stuff that's on Zoom now. And that really has an impact that goes far beyond today, because it could still be an integral part of activities in the future. And so, we've seen those things, the mass attendance, the engagement meetings. We also noticed that we had a Sunday TV Mass that we jointly participate with the Basilica as well as the Diocese of Arlington. And the attendance, the eyeballs on that, it's both broadcast and streaming, skyrocketed from about 1 million that they figured per year to almost 3.5 million in this past year. And so much of that was off of the YouTube channel, not just the broadcast channel on it. On an archdiocesan side, there's going to be some other things we're going to talk about the Archdiocese in a little later in our program here. But I think the big thing that jumped out for us is, we were pivoting to help parishes, and so we were building out landing pages that had all the parish links to their giving pages and fundraising activities there. But I think from a technological standpoint, what was the biggest change we made within our operations? And it came down to, what are you going to do for the in-pew? So we got lucky this past year that the pandemic didn't bite until after our in-pews had happened. But 2021, there's no avoiding it. So we had to fundamentally look at how are we going to engage that very important part of any diocesan's activities that InPew. And what we built out was a digital pledge card. And what a digital pledge card is something that's beyond just an online giving form. It's one in which mirrors what somebody would get in the pews with that envelope, including a bill me later option, which, by the way, some of the online giving providers, might give you a hard time about that, because their initial thought is, if I have a bill me later option, I don't get the merchant fees. So why would I want to provide that? So we convinced our provider that it's, for the long term, it's very much a good business model for you for the long term, because many of those people might turn around and might want to fulfill those pledges via giving. But what was important for us was, in an InPew, if somebody didn't have their credit card or checkbook or cash on them, the beautiful thing with an InPew pledge was that you could pledge an amount, send it in, and then you would get a reminder statement later, or a series of them if you pledged over time. So we needed that option. So we were able to get that into place, and that made a big difference for us. And also to make it easy for pastors who have to present, to have a landing page that's very simple. Everybody gets to the same landing page. It's got a drop-down menu of parishes. You click on your parish, and now you've got a digital pledge form that has the parish already embedded in it for those parishes, that really care about that, attaining their own local goal. So that fundamentally was a shift. Structurally, we still kept it within the comfort zone of pastors, but it was one in which we knew that the adoption of technology had made such a leap that we thought, and we're seeing it as we speak in these last couple of weeks, that folks are using their phones to go ahead and make that gift in the pews. So we're not as devastated as you might imagine it to be if you just couldn't do it at all. So those two areas, I think, are areas where technology has changed for the better, and will be there far beyond the pandemic.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. I'm going to come back and talk about parishes and working with our clergy and their missions. But we had a quick little follow-up question to Kevin. Kevin, you work with an aging population, and the question was, how have you compensated in working with those who are elderly who may not be as familiar with technology? Are there ways in which you've been able to help them to adapt to some of these new platforms?
Well, we've obviously tried to make it as simple as possible. Really, the constituency that I work mostly with is the donor side.
Sure.
The religious communities and the sisters, brothers, and priests who benefit from the work of SOAR. That's another side of the equation.
Right.
But you would be very surprised because in the grants that we give to religious communities, a lot of them are to purchase technology, iPads, in an attempt to help those religious stay in touch with their own congregations and their own communities, but also with their families. They are about as adept as probably we were before the pandemic.
Terrific. So let's talk a little bit about the clergy and religious. I've been enormously impressed with how our clergy and religious have adapted to the ministerial needs through all the missions that they serve. You all serve with clergy and religious in different ways through your ministries and missions. What role have they played to engage their parishioners or their donors, and how have you leveraged that to raise funds for your ministry? And why don't we start with Sarah?
Thanks, Jim. I agree with you. I mean, our pastors and priests within the Archdiocese of Philadelphia have been phenomenal. They've adapted to this ever-changing landscape almost from day one. To pastors, setting up their iPhone to try to record mass, to eventually raising funds to put in a complete system so that live stream mass can continue beyond the pandemic. So, and when you really think about their roles, there's so many challenges that they faced. I mean, they're essentially frontline workers, in this environment. going to hospitals and anointing the sick and doing everything that they normally do, but with an extra layer of caution and everything related to COVID. So pretty early on, CFGP realized that there was going to be a need to help our pastors more, and we created programs to assist in their efforts. One was the Parish Support Initiative, or supportmyparish.org, where every single parish within the Archdiocese was given a link to share with their communities, whether their parishioners or just people who wanted to support that parish to help supplement Sunday offertories. And the response from the parishes again was phenomenal. The pastors were sharing that information on social media, on the websites, talking about it during their live stream masses. So through kind of their willingness to help their parish and respond, we collaborated with the pastors and bolstered their efforts and really increased financial support for the parish communities. We've done a couple of other things too that I can talk about later if time permits.
Terrific. Well, staying on that same vein with a diocesan approach, Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the clergy have adapted in Washington, D.C.?
Sure. Thank you, Jim. Sarah and I, we're about 150 miles from each other. In fact, actually, my hometown is in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and it's 178 miles to my mom's house. From door to door from where I'm at. And so we're in many ways very similar circumstances in terms of, that initial thing of let's help these parishes to be able to be in a digital world for things. And so, I think those things are critically important, and they just help pastors and parishes to be able to be positioned again for success down the road. There was a couple things that when we were coming out of into April and out of April, we had already been doing vetting of online giving providers just to know them. And I do this. Jim, your colleagues have met with me in Washington when I would vet fundraising firms, just so I had in my pocket if a X, Y, and Z parish needed help in X area. I could not just throw them a large list. I could say these three probably are going to make the most sense for you. Well, we were already in the midst of that for an online giving providers when the pandemic had hit. And at the time, we had 40 parishes out of the 140 that did not have an online giving presence. And in about a month's time, we were able to pivot, help them get them online. But then more importantly, we said, okay, step one was to get you online. Step two is we're going to help drive people to their site so that you're getting that support directly. And in fact, they were actually, mutually exclusive on it, but our program was also called the Parish Support Initiative, that same idea of drive support to the local level. And then after that, we have a program that was existing already called Take the Next Step. It's an offertory enhancement program, so one of the three legs of Christian stewardship that traditionally relied on a letter, some stuff at the in the pews and follow-up and things of that nature. Very simple program for parishes to be able to give a boost to their offertory each fall. And what we've done is we've had pastors get comfortable with their online giving, and then what we have done is that we have taken an, oh, by the way, you could also make your offertory online and set recurring to being not just, oh, by the way, but that would actually be the front-facing drive of an offertory enhancement program. So we had about 15 parishes do that this fall. We had a lot of parishes that are just too nervous in this environment, but they know they need it. So what I anticipate is getting them ready and getting my team ready to support them when we get to this coming fall, when I think it might be 50, 60, or 70 parishes that are going to want to do it at the same time. But the idea here was they got comfortable with one thing just as the parishioners were, and then it was like, okay, you've got there, now let's take it another step further for you to be able to get wide adoption and use in areas like recurring giving that can help you far beyond the pandemic for summer and things of that nature, and get people used to really thinking about their giving and seeing it and being able to access that very easily on an online environment.
Mm-hmm. Great examples, Joe. Great. Lisa, tell us a little bit about how the Edmundite missions have been adapting through this.
Well, I mean, the one thing we wanted to make sure is we've reached out to all of our donors. We wanted to make sure that their needs and to ensure that we're receiving prayer intentions, which were then shared, of course. We have Mass daily at the Edmundite Missions Chapel. But both Edmundite Mission Father Steve and Father Richard adapted very quickly. We immediately put into play a virtual Mass every Sunday. And we also incorporated in May, we had a virtual rosary. We built that into one of our appeals, so it went out to our donors. We shared that with them. And it was, I think, just a great, inspiring moment for everyone to come together and really just join and say prayers for what was happening in the world around us. And of course, we also had some assistance from the Father Richard and both Father Steve in terms of putting some prayers together, which we sent out to our donors in email, and also we had inserts that went into the mailings that we had. But also too, with Pope Francis declaring this as a year of St. Joseph, we wanted to ensure that we have been incorporating that into the communications that we're sharing with our donors. So we gave them some prayers that they can incorporate into their daily lives as we continue to work through this all together. And then, of course, just having the ability to continue to just outreach, continue to increase the outreach to the donors and incorporate as much as we can in terms of them understanding that we're in this together, and that, you know, and we're accepting all prayer intentions. I can't tell you how many times I myself have actually, you know, prayed a Hail Mary with a donor at the end of a call. So.
You're absolutely right. There's an opportunity for us as laity to step up to the plate as well and pray with our donors and the people that we serve. And certainly during this pandemic, there's been no shortage of need for pastoral care, whether it be just praying with someone or checking in on them. I don't think you've ever had a better excuse to pick up the phone and call one of your donors just to see how they're doing and how they're managing through all this, whether you had a recent conversation with them or if it's been a year. Thanks, Lisa. Kevin, how have the clergy been adapting and supporting you in your mission through this?
So, Jim, we've been blessed through the years. Here at SOAR, we have a tradition of having particularly religious sisters on our staff. And it may fall more in line with stewardship and quote unquote donor relations, but including our own president, Sister Kathleen. So we've always been in touch with our donors at all levels, at all times. We too, like Lisa mentioned, we reached out to our donors just to make sure that they were safe at the beginning of this pandemic, and to be assured that we're praying for them on a regular basis. The other thing is that we've also been blessed in that, because the end-all recipients or beneficiaries of the work of SOAR, being religious sisters, brothers, and priests, they often, and the congregations themselves, often become the best ambassadors for SOAR. So they spread the word to their donors, perhaps, of this tremendous organization called SOAR, which provides for them, as they age along. So, so in a different way, it's always been kind of ingrained within the work of SOAR for us to have religious helping religious.
Well, your case for support, Kevin, is always so popular with donors because, you know, we all want to say thank you to those men and women who have offered their lives of service and vocation. So I can imagine that they always appreciate hearing, you know, from the clergy. Thank you.
They're our heroes. They really are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to turn the conversation a little bit towards donor advised funds and IRAs, because we've seen a sharp rise in the use of both. A little statistic: Schwab Charitable, one of the largest national providers of donor advised funds and other philanthropic services, reported that its donors supported nearly 100,000 charities in 2020 through 830,000 grants totaling $3.1 billion. Compared to 2019, dollars granted to charities increased 35%, and the number of grants to charities rose 39%. And the use of IRAs was also significant. Sarah and Joe, from your perspective in working with the foundation and with the Archdiocese, how does this compare to what you're seeing, and what do you see as gaining steam in 2021? Joe, why don't you go first?
Sure. I'm going to make this nice and short in terms of what we're seeing. It's like this. It's just skyrocketing, particularly. I think Sarah will be able to even better speak to donor advised funds, because her foundation, part and parcel, is actually serving folks who would like to set them up. I see that from the side of the checks coming in that are coming in from donor advised funds, but the IRA transfers in particular is skyrocketing. So for the IRA transfers, for those who don't know, you can now give from your individual retirement account, your IRA, traditional or Roth, and you can give it directly from your plan to a charity up to $100,000 per person per year, as long as you're 70 and a half or older. And a little slight change in the law, now it is at 72, you have to start by law taking the required minimum distribution, which can cause all kinds of unintentional negative impacts on individuals in terms of their finances in a number of tax areas and other areas. And so you would get some people to say, geez, I wish I didn't have this, because it sometimes can cause more of a headache than good. Now it's a permanent feature of the charitable landscape. It used to just be in 2-year increments. They could give it to charity instead. And that's important, particularly for this environment, our faith-based communities, that the IRAs, we have, generally speaking, an older donor demographic. So this is an area where someone is wondering, how else could I support this organization? Letting them know and say, by the way, there is this thing you might not be aware of. And also there's tax benefits potentially, whether you itemize or not. To learn more, go here, we can walk you through it. What we've seen is several 100% growth just in the last year and a half. Of the IRAs. Donor advised funds are growing as the general level of philanthropy is going on. And it's gotten to the point, Jim, that my tax summary letters that I send every January that encapsulates everybody's giving is actually broken into 3 broad categories. Cash equivalents, like your typical cash, credit card, stocks, things of that nature. IRA giving, which is treated slightly different from a tax perspective. And donor advised funds, which are gifts that are already been thanked by the granting institution. And so I call those third-party gifts. And I can tell you that my tax summary letter has gotten pretty complicated in the last couple of years. And I think that's a good problem to have, because these 2 areas are exploding.
It's exciting. It's exciting. Sarah, what would you add to that from the Philadelphia perspective?
I echo Joe's comments. We've seen a large number of donor advised funds opened, even in just the second half of calendar 2020. I think there are a combination of reasons why, but people really want to take care of the causes they're most passionate about and direct their giving to the areas they care the most about, and a donor advised fund, of course, helps them do that. And even so far this year, we've seen another increase in donor advised funds. I think, as we've talked about so far, we've really seen so much good coming from people this year in the face of so many challenges, but a donor advised fund really just gives someone a vehicle to do more good. So, and then what we've seen, because we hold donor advised funds, we've seen such an increase in the distributions and the giving from those funds. The two largest areas that we saw were, Catholic services and outreach programs, and then health and essential needs programs last year. I mean, that's really where, outside, of course, of parishes. And then followed by education and youth development programs. So those were the areas where our donor advised fund holders were directing their distributions.
Super helpful. And Lisa, I know you also work with IRAs and donor advised funds. If somebody's listening to this this webinar, this podcast, what can they do to continue to promote that, and how are you leveraging that with the Edmundite missions?
Yeah, I mean, I would share Joe and Sarah's enthusiasm. There's $120 billion of assets in donor advised funds. So we need to ensure that we're including the information of how you can give through your donor advised fund and marketing it in every communication channel that you have that goes out to your donors, and also to have a designated landing page on your website. There's lots of available resources. You can have the widget, or you can get even more sophisticated and build more advanced pages that allow your donors to make it very simple for them to complete a gift from their donor advised fund. Also, too, is to dig right into your database and determine who are those donors. So you can look for words such as family foundation, community foundation, family fund, charitable fund, all of these key words. And if you have done an age append, you want to look at anyone who's older than age 40, because what we're seeing is that it's people who are over age 40 who are establishing these donor advised funds. And to include them in your strategies, your mid-level strategy. Don't be afraid to include it in acquisition, even if it's just a call out that you accept donor advised funds. There are organizations that are receiving larger gifts in their acquisition. So, test it. Don't be afraid to test it, because it will result in larger gifts. Not only that, it could result in sustainable gifts that you receive every month. And then that, of course, leads to more relationship building and could become larger gifts, planned gifts in the future. And of course, don't forget the financial institutions. You don't have to send an acknowledgement to the financial institution, such as Fidelity or Schwab. But what you can do is you can send a communication or a letter thanking them for their role in helping their clients fulfill their gifts to support the missions. So that's an important thing too. And last is, don't forget the Half My DAF challenge. For those who don't know about it, it's out there. It's half my donor advised fund, DAF.com. Last year, I sent out a postcard to all of our donors who, within our database, who have a donor advised fund, included something in there about the Half My DAF challenge, which began in 2020. And we did receive, gifts as a result of that. There's more information about it and how it works, which happy to help anyone or answer any questions. But all the information is actually out there on halfmydaf.com.
Excellent advice, Lisa. And as you say, there's so much money out there, and we need to be availing ourselves of that and not be shy. So even if it's putting it in your materials just to get it started, and then check with someone on how you can receive those funds. That's excellent. And I hadn't thought about sending a thank you to the institutions that serve you on that. That's a great idea.
And Jim, real quick on that too. Yeah. When you do reach out, because I think that's a fantastic thing that Lisa's suggesting, to reach out to these institutions. Also, make sure that you check that it's easy for someone to find you in their databases. So sometimes you might be like the Archdiocese of Washington. Our technical name is Roman Catholic Archbishop of Washington. So if they don't have us colloquially as Archdiocese of Washington, which somebody might type in, they might not find us. And so finding those donor advised funds, the Vanguards, the Fidelities, the Charles Schwabs, the community foundations, checking in with them to make sure that you're listed in a way that's easy for folks to find you there is important. And it gives you that chance to say, and thank you for what you do for the community. I think it's a two-way win street there for you.
Indeed. Excellent point, Joe. So let's talk a little bit about stewardship and donor retention. We know that before the world changed, donor retention was already a big challenge for us, and there's always a lot of competition around giving every year. The number of nonprofits alone continues to go up every year, and certainly this year has been no different on the number on the needs that have been presented. There's certainly, as I said before, never been a better time to steward your donors. There has never been an easier conversation starter to just pick up the phone and talk with a lapsed donor. And certainly stewardship of all your donors, including those who have made first-time gifts to help the pandemic, is critical. Please share with us some of the ways in which you have kept your donors engaged during 2020, and how is that shaping up? Do you think you'll repeat or try what new things are you thinking about in 2021? I'm going to go back to Lisa.
Sure. So the missions through the pandemic, through the hurricanes, we never stopped serving the poor. Our doors never shut. Even when the lights went out, we served sandwiches. And we never stopped communicating with our donors. So we made sure that we were very relevant. I think that's been a very important aspect of what, the way you reach out to your donors. There wasn't a single piece of mail that went out that wasn't relevant to what was happening with the pandemic and with pretty much everything that was going on in 2020, which was a very unique year. Being relevant, being transparent, defining what those needs were, and then letting them know how we were responding. How are we partnering? What are we doing to meet these needs? And then what role do they play to help meet these increased needs? Also, every month we had an impact report, letting them know exactly, sharing some vital statistics of how we were doing in terms of number of meals being served. And we put that out every month on our website, and we also sent an email out, and it was important to keep that. That's all part of the transparency. And then just focusing on really relationship building. I think 2020 also raised the idea that donors may have new interests, new passions. Their intentions may have changed after whatever they may have personally experienced in their lives.
Yep.
And so having the conversation with the donors really helps you formulate how your 2021 is going to continue and how you'll reach out to those, to your donors.
I couldn't agree more. And Lisa, one of the things that we've encouraged our clients at Changing Our World is not to presume anyone's situation. There's been a lot of loss. Don't want to minimize that in any way, but there's also many folks who have just simply transitioned their offices to a home office and are continuing to do fine. So I think I think in some cases we find that we're maybe afraid to pick up the phone because we're not sure what's gonna happen on the other end of that. But I think being bold and reaching out to folks is so important. Kevin, from your vantage point, how have you been keeping donors engaged, and what are your plans for 2021?
Well, I would say that we've kind of kept to the simplicity of our strategy all along, and that is, regular touches with donors, checking in maybe even more regularly with them to make sure that they're safe and let them know we're praying for them. I wanted to touch a little bit upon what you just said, Jim, because I remember, 12 months ago, starting on my endless circle of webinars and listening in. One of the first webinars I heard, the presenter said, do not stop asking. Because a lot of and I've heard this, a lot of charities have decided that the world is in a bad place and they're going to step back and they're not going to ask like they normally would. And that presenter said that the important thing is leave that in the hands of the donor. only the donor knows whether or not they can afford to support your charity at this time. But don't answer the question for them because you may be answering it incorrectly. And that, since that first truly was one of the first 2 webinars I attended, I've thought about that. And some people through this pandemic have life has gone on. Life is okay. Yeah, they may be working from home. Maybe they aren't even working from home. There are definitely people who have been hurt, and you don't have to look far for that. But dealing with donors at the levels that perhaps we deal with them, a lot of them were not adversely affected and maybe are feeling even more compelled to give back. So I just wanted to echo what you said, Jim.
Yeah, excellent point. And I think we've experienced that with all of our clients. Those who have been bold and moved forward are now on the other end of this and in so much better situation than at the beginning of the pandemic. And some of our clients have done incredibly well, soliciting 7-figure gifts and raising lots of money for their mission and moving this forward. Sarah, how about from your perspective, stewarding donors?
I think Lisa hit the nail on the head with the word relevant. There's one thing that we learned in 2020 is that the unexpected is going to happen, and just when you think you've got it figured out, the next unexpected happens. And so keeping your messaging to donors and fund holders relevant and helping our clients through that process was really critical. And also during the beginning of the pandemic, we knew there was a need to adapt, and so we created the Emergency Relief Fund, most appropriately titled. Internally we refer to it as the ERF, but it was a way that we could quickly respond to the needs of food insecurity throughout the Archdiocese and help Catholic Social Services provide food to all of the food pantries that they support throughout the 5-county Philadelphia area. So the Emergency Relief Fund will continue beyond the pandemic, but the messaging will change depending on what the need is at the time. So right now, it still continues that Catholic Social Services food pantries are the main beneficiary. And we also we talked with our donors and fund holders about the areas that were the most important to them, and listened to them, and then met them with cases and that were close to what they were looking for, and that was helpful too.
Excellent. Joe, anything to add?
I think actually I would have piggybacked right on to Sarah's point, but it's the next topic, I think, which is case for support. So I'll wait for the next topic.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you then the first opportunity to respond to that then. Case for support, as you said, everyone has one. Many of you have different cases for support depending on what you're raising funds for. A strong case for support is obviously a key for any fundraising activity, and many of you had to adjust your case for support. Have you had to modify your case for support? And if so, how did you communicate that to your donors? Joe, you want to take that first?
Yeah, like I said, just dovetailing right into the previous topic, there are some organizations where they could pivot and actually launch a brand new program altogether that would meet the needs for COVID-related activities. For many, there's not necessarily that ability to go ahead and create a whole new program, But what you can do is take a deeper look at what is the array of services that you offer, what's your current case for support, and look into it and say, are there some areas that we could pull out and put a highlight on, put a spotlight on? Like a diocese, for example, with an annual appeal or something related to that, there's probably 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 ministries. And there may be things in there that you haven't highlighted before that now are relevant. And then 6 months from now, something else is relevant. So that ability to pivot, look deeper and say, within this larger case for support, can I pull certain things out? And in some cases, can I pull it out so far as to make it a separate giving option? And which is one of the things that we found has been very successful. Food pantry programs, needy parish fund programs, some other very specific elements of the appeal, offering it as a separate giving option has generated additional funds beyond the annual appeal, for example. And coming back to the discussion about the donor advised fund, with some specific needs that you're able to offer beyond the general bucket, it allows for things like a donor advised fund supporters to be able to target some giving, such as a food pantry project. So even if you don't have the ability to necessarily launch a new program, take a look inside of what you are offering and what could you highlight and bring to the forefront, and to say, you may not be aware of it, but your support traditionally has gone to this area, and this is something that has got a greater need now. And 6 months from now, when that changes again, look at your case for support again.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Kevin, you want to jump in on this one, case for support?
Sure. Yeah. So again, we keep the message simple. Really, the case for support for SOAR is to provide resources as we have for 35 years. What we did, though, is we created what's called a Rapid Response COVID Grant Program, which is like an additional grant program where we awarded almost $500,000 to religious communities who were most adversely affected by the pandemic. So that's one way that we modified our case of support. I think, based on what 2021 will look like, it'll be interesting. But that certainly the pandemic has created a compelling reason for really all organizations to look at other ways to raise funds.
Absolutely. Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, our case support, I think, became even more predominant, and what we need to do is modify our programs. So the congregate dining that we have out of our nutrition center, our Bosco Nutrition Center, that moved into carry-out meals. And so what we did is we actually shared that message, of how many meals and what the costs were related to that. Moving over to carry out meals, you can imagine that does impact your overall costs. So we did share that, with our donors, and of course education, that impact on the children in our community in Selma and in the rural areas that we serve. They're all virtual. So we knew that there was going to be the need, and so we created an academic resource center that takes place right at our Community and Recreation Center, and we've continued to modify the programs to meet the needs. And again, I wanted to put a little bit more emphasis on partnerships. We really have partnered with various foundations and organizations to help support not just these immediate needs as a result of COVID, but to support the continued growth of the programs.
Did anybody push back on the changes for your cases for support? Let me just throw this out to everybody. If you communicated it and they said, no, that's not what it was for before, did anybody get any pushback on that? It's amazing, isn't it? As long as you properly communicate that, most donors will understand that you had to pivot. By the way, Kevin, we decided a change in our world. Anybody says pivot, you have to put $1 in the swear jar. You have
I'll send it off to you
or circle back. Take it offline.
Sarah, how about you changing the case for support in the Archdiocese?
Really, what we did was we like Joe with Catholic, like the Catholic Charities Appeal, we were able to highlight different beneficiaries that the needs were immediate. And then, with our fund holders, we were able to we actually work, to create these other types of funds, like the Emergency Relief Fund and the Parish Support Initiative. So because we're both a community foundation and a nonprofit consulting firm, we could work, with clients in both ways.
Yeah, excellent. Well, before we go to final thoughts, because I know we're at the top of the hour, and certainly for our guests, we will have a copy of this on the Advancing Our Church podcast available next week. So if you do have to run, we understand. We're going to go just a few more minutes here. This next question is for Kevin around SOAR. One of our guests said that they think it is a SOAR campaign, or at least a SOAR supported campaign showcasing religious getting COVID-19 vaccines. This would accomplish several points: promoting vaccinations, informs people of religious groups that may not be well known, and it also promotes SOAR. Is that a SOAR sponsored activity? Are you aware?
It's interesting because it's just coming to light now. I think that quite honestly, the government is not even necessarily aware of some of the needs of aging sisters, brothers, and priests. And Sister Kathleen, our president, and I were speaking about that just this morning, that we're getting the word out through our friends to the highest sources within the government. Take my word for it, that there are a lot of these religious congregations and communities who are falling through the cracks. And not only would they qualify for vaccines, but they are in desperate need of them. All you have to do is pick up a Catholic newspaper and read about a religious community losing 8 or 9 members within a very short period of time. So I think you'll see in the days ahead and the months ahead that someone has to be a voice for these religious communities that often fall through the cracks, not only in aging expenses that face them every day, but now with the advent of the pandemic, they really need a voice. And it's coincidentally, Sister Kathleen and I were just talking about that this morning. So we'll keep singing to the right people.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Kevin. Next question is, does anyone have a recommendation on a CRM, a database? And if you have an answer for this, if you could, I think it's important to differentiate whether you're recommending this one for a large organization or a small organization, because there's certainly some big cost differences depending upon which CRM you go with. But does anyone have any thoughts on a CRM that you'd recommend?
Yeah, Jim, I think, when it comes to, a database that also serves, of course, as CRM, or even have built-ins with a online giving provider, it really is going to come down to what is your side, what are your needs. So what my recommendation would be isn't necessarily one given provider, but one, in fact, where you write down what are the things I'm looking to get out of it, what are my pain points right now,
right,
and then reach out to a number of CRM firms out there to see what kinds of things they can offer to be the solution. And then, of course, take into account costs, and not just what the monthly fee is, but other things relating to building out reports for you, or are they going to be more hands-on with your data where you're going through them, or is it something where it's going to be more self-serve? You'll hear about the traditional stuff such as like Razor's Edge, which is pretty common. We use a program called Portfolio from Emergent. Many parishes will use ParishSoft, Donor Perfect like programs and things of that nature. The online stuff, there are a gazillion of them. Anybody that reaches out to you, Jim, I can at least share with you, if you're looking specifically for an online CRM, I'm happy to share with you the spreadsheets that we built out when we were vetting all the faith-based ones that we're engaging with our diocese, our parishes.
That's very helpful, Joe. Thank you. Anyone else have one that they want to pop out or mention?
I don't. I mean, I'm with Joe. I actually have used Portfolio, love Portfolio, and right now I'm using Razor's Edge, which also has, of course, excellent capabilities. But I'm happy to speak to anyone on either one of those software packages because I've used both and helped really develop some of the major gift pieces in the portfolio with the reports and things. And Razor's Edge, it's been over 2 years and I'm still learning, to be honest with you.
Oh, so, I was going to say, Lisa, I've never known anyone who used all the features in Razor's Edge.
Right, right.
It's endless. It is endless. It's a great program. Super. And here's an interesting one, and especially since Bitcoin hit $45,000 or something in the last week. So we have one of our guests would like to know, have any of you begun to accept cryptocurrency for donations? I have not heard that from my end happening just yet. How about any of you? Okay.
I can tell you we would be open to it if somebody came to us and said, I'd like to make a gift, but I want to do it via Bitcoin. We're not opposed to taking a look at it, right? It's a matter of going through probably our brokerage firm to say, how could we affect this? Because what we don't want is it just to be handed over, much like if someone was going to hand you a coin collection, would you potentially accept it? Yeah, maybe, maybe not. It all comes down to how would you be able to turn around and liquidate it. So getting, just like any gift, you don't ever have to accept any gift if it doesn't make sense or it's going to end up costing you more money and then what it's worth to be able to do it. And there's ways to do that politely for it. Bitcoin is just another form of currency. And so, it just comes down to if you get that and you have a brokerage firm for your traditional stocks and securities, to connect with them and say, is there a way for that to be accepted much like a regular security and then be able to be liquidated out on a market with some ease? And what would the steps be for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you do go to all that trouble to receive it, make sure that you have a policy that as soon as it's accepted, you sell, because it's about one of the most volatile currencies.
That's what I was going to say. I think it's a great question, and I think actually it should raise a flag that we should all look at our gift acceptance policies to define if we're in that situation, how do we receive those gifts? So there's definitely a paper in there for sure. Well, folks, I'm going to go around the horn here and invite you all just to offer some final comments on our topic today. This has been a great conversation. We got a couple of nice comments from our guests about how much they enjoyed our dialogue today. And why don't we start with you, Lisa? Any final thoughts for our guests today? Sure. I mean, I think 2020 was a unique year, and 2021, I think, is just a new era of fundraising for all of us, including our donors. I think we have to embrace it and make it a transformational year. And I think some of the key words today that we heard, relevancy, partnerships, is this communication. I would definitely be looking into donor advised fund gifts because that's growing and will continue to reap long-term benefits to your missions. And to take a look into really focusing on how you can build off of that and look at the extended relationships. In other words, looking at really building some generational loyalty. So that's pretty much, I think, the best things I can take away for this particular today.
Great advice, Lisa. Thank you. Kevin?
So as we enter, as we enter the new normal, as they call it, I think the important thing is to stick to your mission, embrace technology, keep it simple, and don't stop asking.
Love it. Great advice. Thanks, Kevin. Sarah?
I think the past year, we've learned so much about ourselves and our capabilities. I won't say pivot, but we all have. But our donors and our fund holders and everyone and the fundamental knowledge, basically, that everyone wants to figure out a way to help those in need. Mm-hmm. And as Catholics, that's our response to our baptismal call. So how can we continue with that momentum and help people facilitate their philanthropic interests? I think that's where we need to focus. And we've also learned that the fundraising landscape that we knew was ever changing is really ever changing. And so the way that we can communicate that to all of our partners, whether they be clients or donors or fund holders, and our own staffs, that will help us continue along this very interesting path.
Absolutely. Well said, Sarah, and thank you for reminding us of our baptismal call. That is where this all begins. Absolutely. And Joe?
Yeah, 3 quick things, but specific items I think could be a takeaway for anybody on the call. The first one would be, now that you've probably gotten much more comfortable with your online giving capabilities, now take it to the next step, whether it is a call to action for having folks consider recurring giving, or to be able to utilize it across other types of programs or special ways to take in things like pledges and what have you. Really take those programs, just like we were talking about CRMs, have them utilize those platforms to the best of their abilities. All the bells and whistles, really check them out. See what your program and your provider can provide for you to really enhance that outreach and that experience for donors. The second thing would be something we've talked about today, and that is make sure that you are offering and reminding donors that there are other ways to give. I even go so far on mine and I say smarter ways to give. And I'm sure I get a lot of people like, smarter? What, my check's not good enough for you? But you know what it does? It gets them to click on it and say, well, what is smarter? And then they see all these other things they might have thought about that might pertain to them. Maybe not, but maybe so. And then the third thing was to take advantage of natural fundraising opportunities. So what would I mean by that? Well, in our faith-based space here, we have a lot of different religious holidays and observances. Take advantage of those when they're particularly related to your mission work of what you're doing. And also don't forget about things like Giving Tuesday. So Giving Tuesday is an easy slam. Why am I reaching out to you now? It's because we have Giving Tuesday. We want to participate that day. And you can start 2 weeks early. I would recommend the planning in September, but start 2 weeks early and have it be your gateway to your year-end rush with that year-end activities. So really look at some of those things and go, now that we've gotten more comfortable in this digital technological space, let's really take it to the next level.
Couldn't agree more, Joe. Great words. Excellent. Well, Lisa, Kevin, Sarah, Joe, thank you so much for the great conversation today. I think I speak for all of our guests. It was informative. It was insightful. I think we all learned a couple things that we didn't know before, at least, and some things that we can apply to our own missions and our own ministries. And again, on behalf of Changing Our World, I want to thank our partner, the Nonprofit Alliance, for partnering with us in this webinar. Certainly there'll be more to come in 2021, both from the Nonprofit Alliance, but also from Changing Our World and the Advancing Our Church podcast. We will have the full video and an audio version on iTunes available through our podcast within the next week. And we'll send everyone who registered for this webinar a little link with an email with a link to this episode, so if you'd like to watch it again or share it with your colleagues. Once again, thank you to everybody, and have a terrific week, and we'll talk to you soon. God bless.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
I want to thank Sarah, Joe, Kevin, and Lisa for being on our panel this week, and of course, our partner in this presentation, the Nonprofit Alliance. If you'd like to view the full video presentation of this podcast, please visit the show's episode page on advancingourchurch.com. Well, that's our show this week. Many thanks to the Changing Our World podcast team and to Podesteri Studios for another great show. If you'd like more information about our show, please visit us at advancingourchurch.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And Advancing Our Church is a production of Changing Our World, and we are a fundraising and social impact consulting firm that has been advising both nonprofits and corporations for over 21 years. For more information, please visit us at changingourworld.com. Well, that's it for me, everybody. Have another great week. Take care, and God bless.